I used to work as a groundskeeper for a small, old cemetery on the edge of our town. It dated back to the 1800s, and most of the burials were of families that had been long gone. One grave in particular gave me trouble, Plot 37, belonging to a man named Samuel Price. I had to refill the earth on that grave 3 times in 1 month. Each time, the dirt would sink as if something underneath had shifted. At first, I chalked it up to poor soil packing or maybe water erosion. But then I noticed something disturbing. The grass around his grave never grew, unlike the other plots that quickly sprouted fresh green shoots. One evening, just before sunset, I decided to check on it again. The ground had dipped deeper than before, almost like a hollow pit. The air around it felt cold, and I could smell something faintly metallic, like blood. As I knelt down to inspect, I heard a scraping sound from inside the grave. It wasn't muffled, like an animal burrowing, it was sharp, deliberate, like fingernails on wood. My body froze. I stepped back, heart racing. The next morning, when I returned with another worker, we found the grave perfectly level, as if it had never sunk. I never touched Plot 37 again. When I was a teenager, my friends and I thought it would be funny to play hide and seek in the cemetery. It was a summer night, and the moon lit everything in a silvery glow. I was hiding behind a tall marble headstone when I saw her, a girl about my age, wearing a long white dress. She stood a few feet away, staring at me. Her face was pale, and her hair hung damp over her eyes. At first, I thought she was part of someone's prank. I whispered, "Hey, are you playing too?" She tilted her head slightly, then began to walk toward me. I stepped back, thinking she might be one of my friends in costume, but as she came closer, I realized her feet weren't touching the ground. I turned to run, but in that moment, the temperature around me dropped so sharply my breath came out in clouds. Then I heard her voice, faint and echoing, "You found me." I didn't look back. I sprinted to the cemetery gate, where my friends were waiting, confused. They swore no one else was there that night. But 2 weeks later, I saw her picture in the local library's historical section, a girl who had died in 1923, buried right where I had been hiding. My uncle used to tell us about the Lantern Man, a figure that roamed the local cemetery after dark. Most people dismissed it as a rural ghost story, but one night, I found myself seeing it firsthand. I had gone to the cemetery to visit my father's grave late in the evening. I lost track of time, and by the time I looked up, it was almost pitch black except for the glow of the moon. As I made my way toward the exit, I noticed a small, swaying light in the distance. It was an old-fashioned lantern, carried by a tall man in a black coat and wide-brimmed hat. He didn't seem to notice me, just walked slowly among the graves. I tried calling out, thinking maybe he was a caretaker or a security guard, but he didn't respond. Instead, he stopped beside a grave and knelt down, placing the lantern beside it. Then, in one smooth motion, he reached into the ground, not digging, just reaching, and pulled something long and dark out of the soil. I couldn't make out what it was, but the lantern light flickered violently, casting his shadow impossibly tall against the stones. Then, just as suddenly, the lantern went out. When my eyes adjusted to the dark, he was gone. The next day, I came back to that spot. There was no disturbed soil, no sign anyone had been there, except for a faint smell of smoke in the air. There's an old stone mausoleum in the back corner of our town's cemetery. It's locked with rusted iron gates, and no one has been buried inside for decades. One autumn evening, I was passing by on my way home from a friend's place when I heard something, soft crying, coming from inside. It was so faint that I thought I imagined it, but then it grew louder, more desperate. I went to the gates and peered in. The air was stale, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. The crying continued, but there was no one in sight. Against my better judgment, I pulled out my phone to record it. The sound was clearer on playback, definitely a woman's voice, whispering words I couldn't make out. As I leaned closer, the crying stopped, and something whispered directly into my ear, "Help me." I stumbled back, dropping my phone. When I picked it up, the recording had stopped at the exact second I heard the voice in person. I told a local historian about it weeks later, and he said the last person interred there was a young woman who had been mistakenly declared dead and locked inside in 1904. They only found her days later when the caretaker heard scratching at the door.